Awesome. Um, so it's really cool to finally get to chat with you. I joked with Caleb and saying that I talked to Grady Days there, Jason. I
Mhm.
talked to Caleb. I've talked to David several times, and I needed to complete the set so that I had to talk to you just so I can add that to the podcast collection.
Yeah, very happy that I finally made it too. Yeah.
Very cool. So thank you for joining us. I am here with Birgit Buchart
Yeah.
uh, to chat with her about all sorts of photography. I've been a big fan of your work ever since I've seen you on various podcasts and various YouTube channels, and I finally joined your Substack. I gotta say, you were my one of my inspirations for starting my own Substack. I first learned about it through another podcast that I listened to, but it wasn't photography themed. It was something else. And then I'm like, that might be good for photography. And I just kind of let that lie. And then I came across your Substack. I'm like, all right, deal settled. I'll start my own.
Oh, that's really nice to hear. Thank you.
Yeah. And your photography is really cool. And the more I dug into your website, the more that your history really is quite impressive. So let's just start with what kind of photography you're doing right now.
Hmm. Well, I'm glad you're saying right now because it changes a lot. I always have trouble when someone asks me, what type of photographer are you? What do you do? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I like to shoot a lot of things, and I like to not really put a label on it because it changes a lot.
Yeah.
Really, what I do is I take photos for myself, so I'm not like making my living by taking photos. So I feel the freedom to try different things all the time. And so I shoot whatever I am interested in, really. And that is a lot of just um honestly, just like what I come across in my daily life. So for a while, it was a lot of New York and street stuff, especially when I first moved to New York. And and then I tried to experiment a little bit. I did all sorts of things. And then right now it's been a lot more I guess landscape as well, even though I'm not even really a big fan of landscape photography, but I think I've traveled a lot more lately, and
Yeah.
that's where I take photos. So whatever I come across on travels is what I photograph, and that happens to be landscape sometimes, but I also really love just like exploring little small towns somewhere in between the sites that we're out for. So yeah, really anything that sparks my interest and that catches my eye, I I like to find a way to shoot it in an interesting way.
And speaking of interesting ways, the big reason why I'm also having you on the show is that you are very dedicated to analog photography. You are pretty much filmed through and through from what I've seen.
Yeah, yeah. Which is also why first when you reached out, I was like, oh God, like, do I have even one Fuji camera or I do? But
You've shot on Fujifilm, right?
yes, yeah.
All right, see, that
Um,
qualifies. You're good.
but yeah, I shoot really only on film, and but that to me was well, I started with film when I was a kid. That was where how I first got into photography. And then I was in that generation that like when I went to high school, and it was all Photoshop and digital. And No one showed me even a dark room once. It was just not part of the conversation at all. And I got
What year
really,
was this?
I was in high school when we had photography class. That was in what, like 2008, 9.
Right. So
Um,
digital has at this point really took over the film
yeah.
world.
Yeah. And and it was fun for a little bit to like learn Photoshop and everything we can do with it, but I also got really quickly really overwhelmed with it. And I think I was never satisfied with my work because I always felt like, oh, I could do more, like I could edit this more, should this look different? Like there's so many choices I can make after having taken the photo that I never knew when it's done, when the
Right.
photo was done. And I I think there's photographers who have a vision in their head first, and then they just, work on it until they reach that. And I just like to kind of try things a little bit more. But that means like I'm never know when a photo or when the image is done. So I felt very overwhelmed with digital in school, and then found my way back to film by really getting into or starting to work for Lomography and finding that whole community and niche of analog photography. And just by doing it, I realized, oh, this is what I enjoy about photography is like the actual like act of taking the photo. And I don't enjoy any of the post work of it.
Right.
And for me, it like kind of took so much pressure off everything by just feeling like, well, whatever I shoot in that moment, whatever I can do in that moment with the camera, that's what I'll get.
Yeah.
And so for a long time, I also like really never touched like I sent it to the lab and the photo I got back, that was it. I will say now over the years that has changed a bit, and now I scan at home, so I do have more, I have more a little bit of editing that I do, and but it's still within certain limitations that I really enjoy for my work. Yeah.
So I'm glad you brought up lomography because that's eventually where I was bringing the conversation.
hmm
You went to school and grew up in Germany, correct?
In Austria.
Austria. Okay, Austria.
Yeah.
I was off by a nation.
Almost the same, but we we're very for us it's important for us Austrians that we are different. We share a similar language, but yeah. We're yeah, I grew up in Salzburg in the Alps in a small village in Austria,
Oh, that's
and
beautiful.
yeah. But I went to university in Germany in Munich.
Okay, that's why
Yeah,
I mentioned Germany.
right.
I wasn't totally crazy.
No, no, no. But that wasn't for photography. That
Journalism.
was that exactly. That was writing and journalism. I studied English literature and linguistics, mainly.
So you
And
and
yeah.
I share something similar. I also went to school for journalism,
Oh
and,
yeah.
and through journalism, I learned photojournalism
Mm,
because every reporter had to be proficient with a camera because even back then, for me, it was the 90s
yeah.
when I was in school. And even back then, newspapers had no money. Uh,
Right.
so we all had to learn it. Uh, with journalism and writing being your focus, how did you switch? Did you switch or did you just add photography to that repertoire?
Um, Photography was already before that a hobby of mine. So I got into it like as a kid, and I think I was like 12 or something, just with my dad, and I enjoyed doing it, and had even before university in high school, I went to a high school with focus on photography and graphic design. Um, and and then what felt like writing is kind of more what I really want to focus on for my career, but photography was always part of it was always a
It was
hobby.
in the background.
Right. And so what happened was after I graduated and I spent some time in New York, just post graduation, like th 3 months in New York, just experiencing the art world here. I was reminded of lomography because a friend here in New York was working at their store in New York. And I realized, oh, that's an Austrian company. They're really cool. I wonder if they have any jobs when I go back to Austria. Um, because I like looked up the website and I saw they have a magazine and an online magazine, and I thought that was interesting. So I went back and I applied for an internship in there to write for their online magazine. And I
Yep.
was like, that's perfect. I can write about photography, which I love. I can interview photographers, but I can do the writing for it. And that's how I started that internship. And as everyone who works in that company, no matter what the position is, everyone starts to shoot more. It's just, you kind of like get
When in
uh
Rome.
yeah, yeah. Um and so I started to shoot more and more, and then part of the job was it was like marketing and writing. So I did some marketing, which was mostly articles for the magazine. But um this was a 3 month internship, which I really enjoyed, and I was hoping I could find a way to stay at the company. And then 2 months in or so, a position for the marketing manager opened up in New York. And my supervisor at the time in Austria suggested I should apply because she knew that I had just been to New York. I loved it there. And she was like, this would be a really cool way for you to stay with the company and also make the move to New York. And
That's
I
pretty remarkable. Right out of college, and you're already a marketing manager.
Right, right. I mean, again, like at that time, I was an intern. But then for the company, for I think it was easier to move someone who's already with the company that they know can identify with what the company stands for and everything, and train them, then hire someone completely new. And at the end of the day, Lomography is a small company,
Yes.
and they they like to keep people who are invested and passionate about it, and always feel like we can train you in anything if you feel like you're the right fit for this. And so, and I too, I thought when I applied, I had never met the bosses there. I was an intern. I felt very, it felt very unlikely to me that this could work. But one day someone came into my office in Vienna and asked for a meeting, and then they told me that they had already talked with lawyers and found a way how you I could be transferred. And I And 2 months later, basically, I moved from Austria to New York, and yeah, got stuck here.
That's amazing. That
Yeah.
is quite the shift. And how
Yeah.
was that change from one country to the next? I mean, you're going from one culture to a whole new world. Although New York is a bit of a melting pot.
Exactly. And I think I've spent some time in New York before that, on and off through university, and I found it a good place for me. Like I felt like I could really identify with just the way of living here. I love the energy of it. It was easier for me to feel at home and like find my place here than anywhere else I'd lived before, because I feel like there's so much coming together here that like anyone can find like their little community and their, group of people that are like-minded, because there's so many, that's such a melting pot. And so being in the Lomography office in New York, I very quickly was surrounded by people that shared the same interests, and I found a lot of friends through that very quickly. And I felt, yeah, for me, the move was super easy. Um, yeah, I felt very lucky that that worked out. Yeah, it was.
So, what kind of responsibilities did you have as a marketing manager at that time? Because this is predating social media. I think the predominant one was, I think MySpace was just on its way out, wasn't it?
No, this
Oh,
was
no,
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 no.
this is after. This is after.
This is much later. So I moved here in 2018
Okay, all right.
for
So
that.
I
Yeah,
take that
so
back. Social media is
it
it's
is
still in
already a
its
big part.
infancy, but it wasn't the juggernaut that it is now, but
Yeah,
it
and
was
it
still.
wasn't the main focus for my job. So what it means at or what it meant for me at the time at Lomography to do marketing was um, so we have a team in our or we had a team in HQ that was, putting together the communication, the press releases, and so on. I would be the person talking to press here in the US or North America. Whenever there was a new product coming, I would inform them, and I would basically do collaborations with photographers or artists that we a lot of the marketing at Lomography is like working with creatives who are using the film or the cameras and writing articles about that and interviewing people who are using these things. So kind of like finding interesting content in this market in North America and working with artists who are interested in trying it out and borrowing gear and kind of like coordinating that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So you mentioned lomography is a worldwide uh, phenomenon. How does the United States rank compared to other countries? Is lomography very popular compared to, say, Austria or Germany or Eastern or Western Europe? Or is it like a small chunk or like a big chunk?
No, it's a big market for sure. Just giving the numbers here of it's a big market for that. It's funny. I feel like it's hard to say what's really the most important one because there's lomography has such a big range of different products that, there's different products are really popular in Asia than here and
Yeah.
than in Europe. So all the markets are slightly different, but the US was definitely a big chunk of it. Yeah.
So as you're going through your work life,
Hmm.
you are getting more involved with the photography as well. What really spoke to you in lomography? Was it the various films or was it the various cameras? What appealed to you the most?
For me, it was this approach to it that there's no perfect photo and like kind of this creative approach to it that you can just try things, experiment and have imperfections in your images that really helped me honestly just shoot a lot and be really happy with what I got back and like kind of like just being open to the surprise of what I'll get back. And that to me was I needed that barrier to be removed. I think normally I'm a perfectionist in a lot of ways in my life, and that approach to this fun thing that I was doing where no one's expecting you to have like the perfect shot or, it's all kind of like fun and creative and experimental made it so stress-free and low pressure that I just really enjoyed doing it like, in my spare time and not feeling, yeah, no, without any pressure. That to me was, I think for a long time really important so that I could learn and get better in photography in a way that worked for me because I am, and like this is something that I like compare a lot to my friends that I shoot with now with like Jason or David. They're very they love deep diving into something, right? And so they like they'll like try to understand everything about the photo and why this is good, or like how to achieve a certain aesthetic or something, and knowing everything about the gear. And to me, it I liked doing it and finding things out, which is a way slower process. But for me, it was how I needed to go about it, because I think I would ruin it. I hate having to like study something and analyze and dissect something that I love, that I think I would have ruined it if felt like, okay, in order to get better, I need to learn everything about lenses and all this gear and all, and really study something. Like I never had the patience to watch all the YouTube videos and really learn things. I just wanted to learn by doing. And that
Yeah.
was what Lomography and that whole community kind of showed me was okay and encouraged me to do. So that was really important.
So th I'm going to throw out a suggestion because it's
Hmm.
going to tie into how I feel, what my favorite bits of work of yours that I think is awesome. Um, so it sounds like you you like that relationship with the process itself. You're putting your energy into that process, and it's almost the end result, whatever it may be, is almost secondary compared to being in
Yeah.
the moment.
Mhm.
And so what I found most striking about your photography is your portrait work,
Mm.
because there's something, and it took me a couple days because there's something that I couldn't quite grasp about it, because there a lot of it looks like snapshots, a lot of it looks like just casual portraits, some of it deliberate portraits. But what I got from that is that it's showing a connection. Like what I'm seeing is more than just the portrait. It is your relationship with that person, or more importantly, that person's relationship with you
Mm.
is being reflected back. If that makes any sense, because there's just something very casual about those moments, and it looks like it's in the middle of a moment,
Hmm.
and that's what you've like nailed. And so hearing you talk about loving the process more than anything, it just kind of makes me put that two and two together
Hmm.
with the portraits.
Yeah. Well, thank you for saying that. I think the portrait work is definitely the one thing that I feel most self-conscious about. But I always feel like I would love to do it more. But I have noticed like I'm very much in my head when I shoot with someone who just reached out to me, who wants, likes my work and asks me to take their picture, who I don't actually know. Well,
Mhm.
like that's really hard for me. So it makes sense what you're saying. I don't think I've fully thought it through, and like I don't actually understand it as well, but um I think the photos that you probably saw on my website are, as far as I remember, everything that's up there is, yeah, is friends of mine that like we either did something maybe on purpose, maybe a little bit, a post, but we were probably doing something else and it happened.
And
And
it shows.
yeah, and I love that because I feel extremely comfortable, but like I cannot create something out of nothing. So if I don't know the person at all and I'm in a studio setting, I feel like I feel very uninspired. I don't know how to go about this. Um, and so yeah, I think there's something about the connection with the person that definitely helps me. Um, and again, and I think because I shoot, or the work that you saw is really only photos that exist because in that moment I felt inspired and I wanted to shoot it. It's all it's all just like it came to me, you know. It's not
Yeah.
like I was hired somewhere to do it, and it's like no, I felt like there was something here, so I'm gonna try to capture it. And I feel very lucky that I can take photos this way, and that it is not that I don't do it for a living and have to, in it function in a moment that maybe I would not be inspired to otherwise.
So, kind of like a little side tangent.
Hmm.
When I do wedding and portrait work primarily, and whenever I'm working with couples to do their portrait session, and we pick a location that we are going to photograph, I deliberately pick an area that requires a fair amount of walking.
Hmm.
And that way, during the process, we'll we'll do an exploratory walk of the area and then start photographing on the way back to our respective vehicles or
Mm-hmm.
place where we started. And that conversation with them
Yeah.
is a great way to just kind of loosen things up. And it's,
Yeah.
I mean, just throwing that out there. I just wanted to
Yeah.
share that.
No, that's a really good advice. I
Go
know
for a
I sh
walk.
yeah. I know I should just try it more. I just yeah, I for some reason I feel like it's whenever I have to or whenever I work with a person that's in front of the camera, especially with like all the film stuff, I always feel like I make them wait all the time and like it's such a slow process and I get really in my head about that. But um yeah, I I love that process and like when I'm by myself, I can just really enjoy that and um, that's also why shooting or going on these photo trips with the guys is so great because we're all doing the same thing and all of us, uh, mostly all of us shooting on film all the time. And it so it's like this, we're all on the same in the same pace, you know.
Yeah,
And when I travel with other friends who are not photographers, I always feel like I'm holding up everyone all the time.
that's
So,
all good. Um, so jumping back to lomography,
mhm.
um, uh, what I find fascinating is that you climbed the ranks. You made it pretty high up there. If I'm reading this correctly, you were a president of lomography.
Yeah. I
That's freaking awesome.
well, I know on paper it sounds very impressive. I feel like in reality or like in one's own perspective, it's always it doesn't seem so crazy because here in New York, it was a team at the time of like we closed the store and then it was only the office in like 2018, 2019. And so we were left with we were like five people
Yeah,
for all of North America. And it just happened that two of the previous general managers left pretty quickly, one after the other, and we were all young, team members. But I was in that group, the one that had been there the longest in the end, and so I moved up. And as general manager, you also get the title of president. That's just a, formality, I guess. But
gosh,
um,
that's still pretty cool.
yeah, yeah. But it's um yeah, I don't know. I was also obviously I think everyone in the company we were all surprised that it happened so quickly. It just was just a natural progression of, some people leaving and I mean at the end of the day I really think it's cool that they are I obviously didn't have the experience maybe that you would think someone for a general manager position needs to have, but HQ was definitely like encouraging me and saying, we got you, we will help you, and we would rather, have you move up than hiring someone new again and
Yeah.
from outside the company. And so I worked really closely with headquarters during that time.
I mean, look, regardless of how young you are, or how old you are, if you earn it, you earn it. That's just respect. So awesome job.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
So I'm curious, uh, with with everything going so well, what made you decide to eventually leave?
So at that point, I had been there. I became general manager in 2019. Like was instantly hit with the pandemic and having to navigate that with the team here.
Yeah,
And then it was last year. It was only a year ago that I left. And I just felt that I needed a change and um that I had done and gotten everything from that experience that I wanted. And I think also just I think I grew in my own photography and my interest in photography changed a little bit and I just yeah, it's hard to really say what it was. I just felt like I was ready for something else or a new adventure and there's probably also the fact that I was the general manager. There wasn't uh anything more really ahead in that company. So I just felt like, you know what? I think it would be fun to just try to wing it and do more of my own stuff and also carve out a little bit more free time and energy ahead headspace, honestly, for personal projects that I was at the time really craving on working on. Um, because obviously, all the responsibilities of being a manager and leading a team um, was a lot, and I just felt like I needed some time to breathe as well and be more creative and have more energy for that. So
nice.
yeah.
And so now that you're on your own, so are you on your own or are you just working somewhere else and then doing photography at the same time?
I'm freelancing in general. Yeah. Everything
Awesome.
I'm yeah.
I gotta ask, uh, what are some of the projects that you've been working on currently? You mentioned that you're traveling a lot, doing a lot of landscapes. How let's talk about that a little bit because you said that you typically don't like landscapes, but yet you're still doing it. Uh,
Yeah.
wh what is it about that whole aspect that is drawing you to do something that is
Hmm.
uh, either unfamiliar or uncomfortable? How?
Yeah, I think unfamiliar is the right term. I think I always love to photograph on travels, and I always love traveling. That's always been a really big part of my life. I feel like it paused a little bit after moving to New York because I mean, obviously, like even New York was new, so even my home was new at the time,
Right.
and then because of the job, I just didn't have that much time to really travel as much. But um, exploring something that I've never seen, and whether that's a landscape or a city or I photograph whatever I'm being drawn to that I like looks interesting to me in whether it's colors or the composition or structures or I don't know a certain scene that somehow has a mood. I and I think like when you travel, one you walk around way more with open eyes
Yep.
constantly. You notice way more. It's just things that are unfamiliar are, you know, way more interesting.
Right.
Um, And so I love the idea of just exploring more of the US with the guys. And we I mean it's not only landscape. I think it's just this last trip that we did was very landscape heavy, but I mean we've also, we've traveled the Pacific Northwest. We've gone up to Rochester, or for the eclipse, we did a road trip to Ohio and to shoot the eclipse. And obviously I'd never done anything like that, but um, s- anything that we can come up with where I get to see just like a a scenery that I didn't know before is really interesting. And with Caleb in the car, we always stop at abandoned buildings, which I wasn't so sure how I would feel about first, but I actually also really enjoy it because I think it's really fun to try to figure out how to photograph chaos and make it feel beautiful. And
Very close to landscape photography in that respect.
yeah, yeah, I guess but I think that you have more ways of playing with like framing and perspective than like when landscape is so grand that like you if you stand somewhere and you're at a viewpoint, like there's really only one way then it's more about the gear you use to make it look more interesting. But there's so much to explore, and I love that. I love exploring, I think, with the camera. And I've always loved adventures and travels where I'm constantly on the go and never like steady.
Yep.
So it's yeah, it's just it's fun. And I told the guys I usually let them decide where they want to go next because I'll find something to shoot. Like I don't care where we go. I'll be happy to just be in a car and see what I notice out there.
Right on. I gotta say, probably one of my favorite videos is your trip to the Pacific Northwest.
Hmm.
That one, I could watch that over. Well, I watched it a few times, but it's something that is very easy to have on in the background while I'm editing photos or doing something. It's just it's just like ear candy, the way that everything is happening, unfolding, and
Mm.
the and the humor. It was so much fun. Um, when so the things that I'm talking about are stuff that is on Jason's channel or Caleb's channel.
Hmm.
Is there going to be a time where you launch your own channel? Because I would love to see your photos and have you tell the story of your photos.
Um, it's funny. I feel like, yeah, I mean, I've gotten that question a few times, obviously, since I'm traveling with people who have their own channels. To be very honest, I don't really think so, but I'll also not say definitely no because who knows if one day I'll feel like it's something I want to do. Well, I I don't know Final Cut well enough. I feel like the guys are doing such a good job producing such like incredible videos, and they've worked on, it's like they're taking good photos, but that's like only half the job. They're also making full 1 hour videos that are just like really well produced, and it's like its own art form mixed in there that I would have to kind of learn from scratch. And that's one thing. And the other thing is that I just don't really, I, I don't feel really that comfortable, um, you know, talking to the camera or and doing that whole YouTube a thing. I don't know. I've thought about if there's ways and how you could make or how I could make a video that I would feel comfortable with, where I don't have to do a talking head and explain things because
Yeah.
but I don't know. I thought about it and I didn't really know. It also, I think, would ruin a little bit like the act of photographing for me. I mean, it's a again, like I admire how the guys are doing that, but it's a lot to like set up your camera, film yourself shooting in every moment, and like document yourself documenting something.
Yeah.
It's a lot to think about, and I feel like I'm using all my energy to take this one photo. But but that's where I kind of felt like when Substack came up for me and I discovered that, I was like, oh, I think that's for me because I would much rather find a way um to use this medium and just text. And if there's now a platform that makes people read again, I'll be happy to write something. I never thought that was gonna be a thing again. I thought it's YouTube or nothing, but um yeah, I just don't really see how I would find a YouTube channel that I could do. But now there's different ways. We can also talk about our photos and for me, I think for now that's Substack.
And right back to your original degree.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's very cool. So I got to ask before we end, what are the cameras that you're using for your photography, and what are your favorite film rolls to photograph with?
Oh, okay.
It doesn't have to be
mm,
Fujifilm.
yeah. Um, I the past what 4 or 5 years I've been mostly shooting with a Hasselblad 500 cm.
Yep, great
Um,
camera.
yeah, I I bought myself that for my 30th and thought that that's my one and only camera I'll use for the rest of my life because that was the dream camera for me for many years.
Yeah.
Um, and I still do really love it. I this past year I have struggled a little bit with the square format, and I felt myself or like I noticed how I'm craving a different format again, and um I couldn't really make the 645 back work for me either, so I ended up just recently buying a Mamiya 7, probably heavily influenced by my travel friends. And I was so scared to tell them because I always made fun of that camera every time we were on a trip because it's hilarious to me how this camera is so big and such a good camera and everyone loves it, but then you press the shutter and it makes the tiniest, like cutest little, it's almost like, yeah, it's hilarious. So I always made fun of it and I never thought I was gonna shoot it. And then I what led me to it was actually the Fuji GSW 69. I
Yes.
so here we got a Fuji one, thankfully. I had borrowed that from a friend and um really loved it. Like surprisingly really enjoyed shooting with it. And I was just really excited to have a different format, a bigger negative, and the only thing was I have the super wide, and you can't swap the lenses at all,
Yeah.
and it's so it's a little limiting again in that sense. And then I was like, well, I guess if I want 6.7, I think I'll try the Mamiya 7. It's also much lighter than the Hasselblad, and with all our trips and hiking that we've been doing, I felt like I would be happier carrying that around too. So yeah.
That's awesome. With got it. What's your favorite film stock?
Um, that's a really hard question. I don't have a favorite film stock. I think I am really happy that we still have quite a bit of a variety, even though it's sometimes getting smaller. But
Yeah,
um,
Fujifilm is not making that easy.
no, they're not really helping with that. But I really like Ektachrome in the right situations. I've learned to enjoy Ektar recently, thanks to David. And I I like Portra. I like a lot of the Ilford black and white stocks and Kentmere. It honestly depends on what I'm looking for and what I'm shooting. But yeah, I always have a big mix on the trips. Big mix of film.
What do you think about the 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 kind of uh, I don't want to say degradation of film. That's not the right word I'm looking for, but like more and more these days, you have certain films that are getting discontinued. Do you think that's going to come to like a boiling point that granted, I think film will always be around, but do you think that there will come a point where film does make a tremendous leap back, or do you fear that it's going to like more and more
Hmm.
films will continue to get discontinued more?
Well, I think I will say I'm pretty optimistic. I think there were times when it felt more like there were only stocks were getting discontinued, and that was the only trend we're seeing. But I think in the past 5 years, more new film has shown up in the market than things have to, I mean, I don't quote, it might be, I would have to fact check the numbers, but I feel like we are also seeing a lot of, at least a lot of new companies trying to push back on that and come out with new films. Harman is on their color film journey. They're trying to make more color film in the next years. That's a big, I think that's a big thing. And there's other companies that are trying to make film more accessible or like keep formats alive and I think that's in my little bubble that I'm in, it's actually feels very optimistic and positive. And just recently, this past year, Kodak has been investing again more into fighting their bottleneck in film spooling. So I I think we're gonna be good. I think we'll be fine, and
Knock on
yeah,
wood.
yeah, yeah.
And the last question I have for you is kind of tying into Fujifilm. How do you feel about digital cameras trying to capture that film spirit?
Mm.
Like Fujifilm has their film simulations. There are other cameras that have their various LUTs. Uh, how 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 does that
Yeah.
work for you? Like,
Don't be afraid. I'm not gonna
no. Look,
I'm
for me personally,
yeah.
I've come out and said that I think, especially because Fujifilm has just released their half frame camera,
Yeah.
and I thought being able to mimic diptych style photography is pretty cool. But when they tried to do the film winder as a digital option, I thought that was a bridge too far. And it really made me think about why me personally, I love the Fujifilm X series cameras. And I associated the camera's popularity, well, not popularity, but the camera's uh dials and everything as something that was akin to film. And after the X frame came out, it made me reevaluate what I was actually reminiscent of. It wasn't the film glory days, it was just the manual photography process that
The
really
feeling
drove.
of that.
Right. It was the process that
The
I loved
process. Yeah.
because the reason why we associated the manual dials with film photography is that was the last time that they were used. When cameras eventually made it to digital, and I use the Nikon F5 as an example, the Nikon F5 looks more like a digital camera than it did a film camera back in the day.
Hmm.
And so that was my aha moment that I'm like, oh, wait a minute. It wasn't the film process that I loved. It was the photography process. So any camera that is being made should make the photography process the primary goal
Hmm.
of its existence. And trying to pretend that it's film with a film winder and oh, you're out of film in this camera roll. It's like it just kind of rings hollow to me.
Mm.
So
Mm.
so long story short, fear not about
No, I also I think people that I've talked to lately about this have been surprised that I'm very mild because I am, I am the one who like I will give my friends shit when they all of a sudden have a digital camera or you know I but um it's I don't know. I think it's funny because I don't feel threatened by it. I don't think it's actually doing anything to film in a negative way because it's not replacing it. That's really clear to me that like this is not gonna get film shooters to use a camera that has film simulation or pretends to be a film camera and then shoots digital because there's way more reasons I think why people shoot film. It's the same thing with like I mean we've had this whole conversation back with Instagram when they first came out they basically had film simulation like they had filters
exactly.
that were pretending to be analog photos. They even had one that was called Lomo and I think everyone was scared for a moment, like what is that gonna destroy even more of the film? But actually it had the opposite effect. It had for kids that grew up with digital with their phone cameras, they through that like found out how cool film looks and wanted to do the real thing eventually and like discovered film
Yep.
through that process. And I think um I don't see anyone around me, ditching film because there's now a half-frame digital camera and or good film simulations. I think if anything, it's helping us keep film and the aesthetic of film and the everything alive because we're constantly being reminded of it. Where if digital cameras are reminding people like, this is the real thing, this is what we're basing things off, then that's good marketing for film.
Well
And
said.
and I think it's a different market. I think it's different people, but at the end of the day, the more people find their way into photography in general, the better for all of us. And um yeah, and I think it probably has its place. I don't think it's gonna really uh fight with the analog world too much. And but at least Fuji is showing that they know that film is relevant enough for them to think about this, or find ways to tie it in. Personally, I wish they would just put that money and effort into actual film. Um, but at least they're aware of it, aware that it's a that people want that look at least, and then maybe they'll find out it's more than just the look, and they want the real thing, you know.
And who knows? Maybe one day they'll make a film camera. That would be
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah. I would support that.
Very cool. Birgit, it was such a pleasure to have you on the show. Uh, tell the world where they can find you on the web.
Yeah, I am on Instagram, Birgit Buchart. That is the trickiest name to have in America. It's Birgit and Buchart. And I am also on Substack. I think you can find me just with my name as well. And then
Yes, you can.
yeah, and then my publication is called In Frame. And yeah, that's it.
Excellent. And all the links will be in the show notes to this episode. Uh, I would love to have you back on the show uh, next time. Where if you do any kind of big project, I hope to see you make a book someday
Thank
because
you.
your work really does have that emotional connection that I think is just very unique, and you bring about an amazing style, something that is very visually awesome to look at, as well as that touch of personal to it. So thank you for being on the show, and
Thank
yeah,
you.
you're more than welcome to come back on anytime.
Anytime. Yeah. Thank you so much.
And maybe, just maybe, I'll have all four of you on as
Oh yeah, that would be chaotic and fun, I'm sure. Yeah.
I mean, why not? I
Yeah.
think it'll be fun.
Yeah.
Okay, hang on for 2 seconds. Let me stop the recording here.